You step onto the first tee, you settle your feet, you take one last look down the fairway, you swing as hard as you can, and you watch that little white ball climb into the sky, hang there for a second, and then curl hard to the right, into the trees, again. I know that feeling. I lived with it for almost 30 years, and here is what nobody told me. For about $12, the price of 2 coffees and a newspaper, you can fix that slice for good. Not with a new driver, not with a package of lessons, with one thin fiberglass rod and a method that quiet Japanese golfers have used for more than 60 years. I found it the hard way, and I found it far from home. And before we are done, I am going to show you the exact drill that got written into practice routines in Japan starting in 1957, the year everything changed, at a course called Kasumigaseki, just outside Tokyo. You can set the whole thing up in your own backyard this weekend, with nothing but a rod you can buy at any hardware store. I still remember the moment it cracked open for me. I was standing on a rubber mat at a crowded driving range in Chiba, watching a man who had to be 70 years old hit one straight drive after another. No lurching, no effort, just a thin stick planted in the ground beside his ball, and this calm little swing that sent the ball dead straight every single time. I thought, that cannot be it. It cannot be that simple. I was wrong. So let me tell you why your ball slices in the first place. Because until I understood this, I was throwing money at the wrong problem for decades. Here is the truth that took me years to accept. Your slice has almost nothing to do with how strong you are. It has almost nothing to do with how expensive your clubs are. I bought 3 drivers in 5 years chasing a fix. Each one promised to be more forgiving than the last. Each one sliced. Because the ball does not care what you paid. The ball only reads 2 things at the moment of contact. It reads the direction your club head is traveling, and it reads where the face of your club is pointing. That second one is the killer. Modern launch monitors, the same radar systems the professionals use on tour, have measured this down to the fraction of a degree, and what they found is stunning. The direction your ball starts is controlled roughly 85% by where the club face points at impact, not your body, not your swing path first, the face. So when your ball curves violently to the right, it is telling you something very specific. At the split second you struck it, your club face was open. It was pointing off to the right of where your club was moving. That open face puts a sideways spin on the ball, and that spin is what makes it peel off into the trees like it has a mind of its own. Now here is why this matters so much, and why almost everything I was told made it worse. When you see the ball go right, your instinct is to aim further left to make room for the curve. I did this for years. I aimed at the left rough hoping the ball would come back to the middle, but aiming left with an open face only makes the club cut across the ball even more steeply. It adds more sideways spin. The slice gets bigger, not smaller. I was feeding the very thing I was trying to starve. So the real problem was never my strength, and it was never my equipment. It was that open face and a club swinging across the ball from outside to in. Fix those 2 things, and the slice has nowhere to go. That is the whole game. And that is exactly what a $12 rod is built to fix. But knowing the problem and feeling the solution in your own hands are 2 completely different things. That is where this quiet Japanese story begins, and where I finally started to understand what that old man in Chiba was really doing. Golf in Japan was almost nothing before 1957. A handful of courses, a rich man's game. Then 2 Japanese players, a man named Torakichi Nakamura and his partner Koichi Ono, won the Canada Cup at the Kasumigaseki Country Club that year, in front of their own people. The country went golf mad almost overnight. But here is the thing. Japan is a small, crowded country with very little open land. They could not simply build thousands of wide-open courses for everyone the way we did. So they built driving ranges, tall ones, stacked 2 and 3 levels high, wrapped in green netting, tucked between train lines and apartment blocks, and a whole culture grew up around hitting balls into a net, over and over, with almost no room for error. When you cannot see your ball fly 300 yards, when it just thuds into a net 40 yards away, you learn to obsess over the only things you can control up close: the face, the path, the little details. And out of that packed, disciplined range culture came a habit that most Western golfers still ignore. Before a single ball is struck, they lay down sticks, alignment rods. They build little gates and channels on the ground to train the swing to move correctly, so the body learns the feeling and repeats it without thinking. That old man in Chiba was not doing anything mystical. He was doing what 2 generations of Japanese range golfers had done before him. He was using a stick to cage his own swing into the right shape. Now here is where it connects to something much older and much deeper in Japanese culture, and this is the part that gave me chills when an instructor there first explained it to me. The Japanese swing thought does not come from muscle, it comes from the sword. In Japanese swordsmanship, there is a concept called te no uchi. It roughly means the inside of the hands, the exact way the hands grip and release at the moment of the cut. A samurai did not hack at a target with brute force. If he squeezed too hard, the blade twisted and the cut failed. The power came from a relaxed hold that tightened only at the last instant, letting the blade square itself and pass cleanly through. The whole art was in the release, not the grab. And that, I promise you, is your slice in one sentence. You are gripping too hard, too early, holding the face open through impact because your hands are frozen with tension. You are hacking. You are not letting the face release and square itself the way a blade squares through the cut. The Japanese range golfers understood this because their whole culture already understood it. The rod on the ground trains the path. The soft hands train the release. Together, they close the face. So I had the theory. I understood the face. I understood the path. I understood the soft hands. But I want to be honest with you, because I know exactly what you are thinking right now, and I thought it too. You are thinking, that is fine for a man standing on a mat in Tokyo with an instructor beside him. You are thinking maybe this works for younger men, or flexible men, or men who can practice 5 days a week. You are thinking your back does not turn like it used to, or your course is nothing like a Japanese range, or you do not have money to burn on gadgets. I heard every one of those voices in my own head. So this next part I built specifically for you, the person who assumes this cannot possibly work in your ordinary life at home. Because it can, and it costs almost nothing. Here is exactly what to buy and exactly what to do, with things you can pick up this week. Go to any hardware store or garden center. Ask for a driveway marker. It is a thin fiberglass rod, usually 4 feet long, the kind people stick along a driveway so the snowplow can see the edge. They cost about $6 each. Buy 2. That is your $12. That is the entire investment. You do not need a special branded alignment stick that costs $30 with a fancy logo. A driveway marker is the same fiberglass rod with a different sticker. Now, if you can get to a range or even just a patch of grass in the backyard where you can safely swing, here is the first setup, and this is the one that started turning my slice around within a single afternoon. Take one rod, lay it flat on the ground, pointing straight down your target line, and set it a couple of inches outside your ball, on the far side, the side away from your body. This rod is your wall. Your slice comes from swinging across the ball from outside to in, cutting left across it. If you swing that way now, your club will smack into the rod on the way through. So your body, being smart, quickly learns to swing from the inside instead, to approach the ball from behind and send the club out to the right, away from that rod. That inside path is the exact opposite of the slice motion. In one setup, you have blocked the bad path and forced the good one. I remember the first time I did this in my own backyard with a plastic ball. I hit that rod 3 times in a row. Clack, clack, clack. It was embarrassing and it was thrilling, because for the first time in my life I could physically feel, how far off my path had been. By the 10th swing I was missing the rod. By the 20th my body had found the inside path on its own. No lecture could ever teach me that. The rod taught me in 10 minutes. And that is the thing I kept turning over in my head for years after Chiba. The stick on the ground is only the first door. Behind it sits a whole method those ranges built, how the trail elbow folds and stays in front of the chest so the club never gets thrown outside the line, how the tiny pause at the top lets the sequence fire in the right order, how a man past 60 builds real lag without asking his back for 1 degree more turn than it wants to give. That is what I sat down and wrote out, page by page in my books. The full downswing framework. This video only has time to sketch. With the 8-week deliberate practice plan, the diagnostic that tells you which fault is actually yours, and the mobility and recovery work so your hips let you keep playing the golf you earned. 410 pages of it, plain language, no gadgets. If you want the whole method and not just the drill, scan the QR code right there on your screen, link in the description, pinned comment, the books are waiting. Now, back to the ground. Because the rod is only half of what that old man was doing, and the other half is older than golf itself. Now take the second rod, and this is for your feet and shoulders. Lay it on the ground parallel to the first one, on your side of the ball, along the line of your toes. This is how you finally learn where you are actually aimed. I discovered, to my shame, that for 30 years I had been aiming my shoulders far to the left, wide open, which fed the slice every time. The moment I laid a rod down along my toes and stepped up to it honestly, I could see my whole body was pointed in the wrong direction. The rod does not lie, your eyes do. And here is the part for the man with the aching back and the shoulder that will not turn like it did at 40. You do not swing harder to fix a slice. You swing softer. Remember Te no Uchi, the soft hands of the swordsman. Grip the club like you are holding a small bird, firm enough that it cannot fly away, gentle enough that you would not hurt it. Take the club back to only 3/4 of your normal length. Then let your hands relax and let the club head release through the ball. A slower, softer swing with a square face will fly straighter, and believe it or not, often farther than your all-out lunge, because a straight ball with the right spin carries and rolls while a slice just dies sideways in the rough. So you do not need Japan. You do not need youth. You do not need a coach or a membership or a new set of clubs. You need $12, a flat piece of ground, and about 20 minutes. That is the whole thing. And now I have to tell you why almost nobody in the golf world wanted you to know it was this cheap and this simple. Because there is a great deal of money riding on you believing your slice is complicated. Think about it. The moment you accept that your ball is slicing because your face is open and your path is out to in, and that a $6 rod can retrain both, an entire machine loses its grip on your wallet. I know, because for years I was the machine's favorite customer. I bought the drivers, every spring a new one, promising more forgiveness, more anti-slice technology, a special weight in the heel that would magically straighten my ball. $400, $500, each time. I bought the lessons, and I want to be fair. Some instructors are wonderful, but many of them are trained to keep you coming back week after week, feeding you one small change at a time, so the meter keeps running. I bought the gadgets with straps and clamps and beeping sensors. I spent, over the years, And I did the math once and it made me sick, well over $3,000 trying to buy my way out of a slice that a $12 rod fixed in a summer. Nobody sells you the rod because there is no profit in the rod. There is no yearly upgrade to a driveway marker. There is no subscription. There is no shiny box. A thin fiberglass stick does not fund advertising campaigns or sponsor tournaments. So it sits quietly in the garden section of the hardware store while you are steered toward the $400 club that will slice just as badly, because the club was never the problem. The problem was knowledge that was cheap to give and expensive to withhold, and they chose to withhold it. The Japanese range golfers were never caught in that trap in the same way, because their whole culture was built around the cheap fundamental, the stick on the ground, the soft hands, the endless quiet repetition into a net. Value came from mastery, not from purchase. That old man in Chiba had probably swung with a rod beside his ball for 40 years. His secret was not in his bag, it was on the ground, and it had cost him almost nothing. But I promised you something more. I promised you the exact drill, the one that goes back to that range culture, born after 1957, the piece that finally locked my swing into place and killed the slice for good. And this is the part that almost nobody in the West talks about, because it seems too small to matter. It is the opposite. It is everything. Here is the secret finale. Most people, once they learn the gate drill, lay both rods perfectly parallel, pointing straight at the target, and they practice hitting through the channel. That is good. That fixes maybe half of it. But the Japanese range method adds one more move that changes everything, and it is built on that sword idea of the release, the te no uchi. You take the outside rod, the one on the far side of the ball, and instead of pointing it dead straight at the target, you angle it. You turn the far end of it slightly to the right of your target, so the channel it forms is pointing a touch out to the right, out toward the field. Just a few degrees. This feels wrong. Every instinct screams that you are aiming into the woods on the right. Do it anyway. Because here is what happens. That slight rightward angle forces your club to travel even more from the inside, out toward the right, through the ball, and a club moving out to the right, with a face that is only slightly closed to that path, does not slice. It draws. It curves gently back to the left, the very shot every slicer dreams of and never believes they can hit. The angled gate does not just stop the slice. It teaches the opposite shot. It overcorrects on purpose, so that your natural, comfortable swing lands right in the middle of straight. And there is one more layer, the smallest and the most powerful, and it comes straight from the swordsman's hands. As you swing through that angled gate, I want you to feel your forearms rotate, your trail forearm crossing over your lead forearm through impact, the way a blade rolls over as it finishes the cut. Not a violent flip, a smooth, relaxed roll, driven by soft hands and released at the last instant. That rotation is what squares and then gently closes the face. The angled rod trains the path. The forearm roll trains the face. Put them together and the open face that ruined 30 years of my golf simply cannot exist anymore. There is no room for it. The drill will not allow it. I set this up in my backyard on a Saturday morning with 2 driveway markers and a bucket of plastic balls. I angled the far rod a few degrees right, the way the Japanese instructor had shown me, and I gripped soft, like the little bird, and I let my forearms roll through. The first few balls felt strange and wild. Then the 4th ball started right and drifted gently left and landed soft. Then the 5th, then the 6th. I stood there in my own backyard, a man past middle age who had sliced the ball since Nixon was in office, watching draw after draw after draw, and I laughed out loud like a boy. $12, 2 sticks, a morning. That was the price of the thing they had let me chase for 3 decades. That is what was taken from you. Not a swing, A simple truth, sold back to you again and again at a markup, when it was sitting in the garden aisle the whole time for the price of lunch. And I think you already suspected this. I think if you have watched this far, you are the kind of person who has felt, deep down, that a lot of what gets sold as complicated is really just simple knowledge with a price tag bolted on. You are the kind of person who would rather own the truth than rent the illusion. That instinct of yours is right. It has always been right. This is just one more proof. So let me ask you something, and I really want you to answer this one. When you lay that second rod down along your toes this weekend, and you look down at where your body is actually aimed, are you going to find, like I did, that you have been pointed way off to the left all these years without ever knowing it? Tell me in the comments. Write down which way you were really aiming once that rod showed you the truth. I read them, and I promise you are not the only one who is about to get a shock. And if some part of you feels that little spark, that suspicion, that there is a whole library of simple, honest, nearly free fixes like this one that got quietly buried because there was more money in the complicated version, then come with me. Subscribe and stand with the people who are digging this knowledge back up, one forgotten method at a time. Because the next thing I want to show you is another discovery from those same crowded Japanese ranges, a way the old players kept their hands and wrists from breaking down into their 70s and 80s, still swinging smooth and pain-free, using nothing but a towel and 10 minutes a day. They were doing it decades before a single sports doctor caught up, and once you see it, you will never warm up the old way again. For now, go by the two rods, angle the far one just a touch to the right, hold the club like a small bird, let your forearms roll through like a blade finishing the cut, and go watch that ball, the same ball that has embarrassed you on the first tee for years, start right and curve gently home to the center of the fairway. $12, not $400. That is all it ever cost. They just did not want you to know it. If you're still here with me, let me share something. This video gave you the overview, but inside the Japanese way circle, I continue right where we left off. And if you get stuck, you can ask me your own question, and I answer you myself. No robots. You won't be alone. You belong here with us. Just point your phone at the code on screen. You can cancel anytime. Come join me. Now that your slice is fixed, let me show you the real secret to a straighter driver. It's an old Japan trick for releasing the club properly, and it's starting right here.